Greetings, Attorney Cheshire DeBrosse, Ohio gun lawyer with Munitions gun law group here today. Coming to you because of what's going on politically in today's society with the shooting in Vegas. I felt it was important that we discussed machine guns and kind of how they're regulated a little bit. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding out there, a lot of things being stated in the press, and I want to make sure we're very, very clear. There was no machine gun actually used in these murders. These horrific crimes were committed by semi-automatic rifle using what's commonly referred to as a bump stock. Bump shooting has been something that's been around for many, many years. You can actually do it with a piece of string, your belt loop, your sling. It's essentially just creating a pivot point with your trigger finger where the weapon rocks back and forth or bumps along that pivot point at a rapid rate. There was a company, I believe it was called Slide Fire, came out with this stock back in 2010. They actually got approval through the ATF and received a letter from the Firearms Technology Branch, which is the division of the ATF where you submit samples of products to get a determination letter or an opinion from the ATF as to whether or not it's regulated by the National Firearms Act. And in fact, that occurred during the Obama administration. There's a lot of talking heads out there saying it's the Obama administration's fault. It was not. Quite honestly, it's the law. I do not believe, in my legal opinion, that the Slide Fire is a machine gun. The NRA is asking for the ATF to relook at that. I think, quite honestly, I think the determination will come back the same. I don't think it should come back any different. Whether or not Congress should legislate as a policy decision, my personal opinions aside, that's a decision for our legislatures to make. I generally am a staunch constitutionalist, so I'll let my viewers assume what they think my opinion on that is. Nevertheless, we do deal with these laws on a regular basis. My office handles NFA items on a quite frequent basis, and I wanted to go over how that's defined under the National Firearms Act. And in our law in the United States, we define machine gun. I want to read it from written paper here to make sure we get it exactly correct. Is any weapon which shoots is designed to shoot or can be readily restored to shoot automatically more than one shot without manual reloading. And here's the key words: by a single function of the trigger. So we've seen a lot of different devices generated over the years, the Hellfire trigger amongst other types of items, which is basically a spring that went behind the trigger that forced your finger forward, and applying the proper amount of rearward pressure would create or mimic the effect of a machine gun. It's essentially what the Slide Fire stock did, or Bump Fire stock did. It basically was a housing stock that housed the buffer tube assembly of the AR-15 style rifle, and as you were pushing forward on the forward grips or the forward rail, and you were pulling back along the trigger with your trigger finger, that weapon would essentially rock back and forth at a very, very quick rate, hitting your trigger finger, which with each rock or each bump against the finger, mimicking the machine gun effect. Now, the key here is why I don't believe it's a machine gun is because that trigger is functioning each and every time a round is fired. You have a single function of the trigger for each round that's fired. So at the end of the day, I don't think it was any particular person's fault, and the law is the law. It is what it is. The person's fault, who this is the criminal. We can't legislate evil out of this world, unfortunately. I do think there are some other things we should be looking at in our society as a whole, including our culture and things of that nature, to try and address these problems. But nevertheless, my job here to my viewers is to explain this law to them. In 2010, there was a letter given to the company Slide Fire that basically stated, essentially, in other words, what I just stated, and said it's not in fact a machine gun. So I wanted to make it very, very clear to the listeners out there what was going on, what a bump fire is. Our office has been very, very aware of these items, have been on the market for many years. With that said, if you have any questions, comments, disagreements, alibis, whatever it is, drop them in the comments. And hopefully when you guys see me again, we'll have something a little bit more lighter and more enjoyable to discuss. But my heart and my condolences go out to the victims of this terrible tragedy. And I will continue to do what I do to fight for our rights for each and every one of us out there, and to ensure that knee-jerk legislation hopefully does not encroach upon our liberties. Thank you.